We were told that up here, it's cabin country. People come here to vacation, to leave the work at home, and have drinks out on the dock. They plan to retire up here, not put in 100-hour work weeks. So we knew there was a story to be told, and questions that needed to be asked. Like, how did a conversation on a deck forever change the legacy of a farm? Or how did a town of 500 people become a must-visit for thousands? Why would a man grow 6 different crops a year by himself? And how does a father and son rely on each other for their livelihood? This is why we came to Serona, Wisconsin. It was time to hear the story of Perlick Farms.
I think we're ready, right? Okay. This used to be a dairy farm there, that used to be a dairy farm, that used to be a dairy farm, that one used to be a dairy farm, there used to be a dairy farm there, so there's 5 dairy farms within sight here. And none of them anymore. Right. It was a lot of work, and I think that's why you don't see a lot of small dairy farmers anymore, because it is just so much work and so little time off that it just isn't a suitable profession or career for as many people anymore.
Like many Wisconsin kids in the 1960s, Tom Perlick grew up on a dairy farm, a path that was laid out for him by the last 4 generations of Perlicks.
It was one of those lives where I've always said I wouldn't want to do it again, but I was really, really happy that that's how I grew up.
But Tom wanted dairy farming to live in his past. So he joined the National Guard, got an education, and became an agronomist.
I like to see something always growing here. But the other thing I look for is the aggregation of the soil. You can see how this soil crumbles, because that allows the roots to grow through here, and the crumbling is really what we look for.
It wasn't until 1994, when Tom's father unexpectedly passed away, that he decided to come back to the farm in order to preserve what the generations before him had built.
And many times it's equivalent to an old car or a Model T or an old farm tractor. You're not driving the tractor or driving the car, you're driving the memory. That to me is very important. And so farming this farm is keeping it in the family.
But the dairy operation of Perlick Farms died with his father that day in 1994.
First year I had 30 acres of corn and 20 acres of wheat. In fact, I planted the corn with a 2-row corn planter and a John Deere 620 tractor. Gradually got up to about 3,000 acres till about, I think 6 years ago, started downsizing some.
Tom's downsized farm consists of over 1,700 acres in Serona, Wisconsin. 500 acres are for corn, 400 acres are soybeans, 400 for their spring and winter wheat, 100 for sunflowers, 75 for barley, and 50 acres of dry edible black beans. Perlick Farms is very diversified in their crops, and also how they market them, which is where Tom's son Scott comes into the picture.
So this is it. It's going to be weird for you, Scott.
It's weird for you.
Yeah, but you too. I asked him, I said, what happens if I drop something on my toes and drop the F-bomb? So Scott was in the Air Force, stationed out in Spokane, and he was home on leave, and we were sitting on the deck up at the house one night, having an adult beverage. And I said, Scott, what do you think about starting a distillery here on the farm? And what did you think or say?
I don't know. He always says I thought he was crazy, but I don't recall that.
You did. You're like, the old man's lost his marbles. He's gone off his rockers.
But 6 years after that conversation in 2014, Perlick Distillery officially opened its doors with the sole purpose of adding value to the farm's grain.
We capture that value here on the farm and at the distillery. We're capturing the value of the added value of the grain that we're producing versus just putting it into a truck and hauling and let somebody else capture that value. So I think it was John F. Kennedy or Eisenhower that said farmers are the only ones that buy retail, sell wholesale, and pay the freight both ways.
Farms of America is presented by RM43. Serious weed control. Farms of America is presented by RM43. Serious weed control.
The wide diversification and marketing techniques used by Perlick Farms was born out of pure necessity, because it's not easy running a farm up here.
This is a really fragile area of Wisconsin, and really farming here, we're on the edge, 20 miles north, and there's just not any farm.
The rocky soil, late and early freezes, and high precipitation are just some of the factors they face that can impact yield, which is why Tom believes they have to create additional value for their crops. One tactic the farm uses is to sell their harvested corn directly to nearby retailers, instead of solely relying on the commodity markets, where prices can fluctuate frequently. Tom told us that commodities, such as corn and soybeans, are sold on exchanges or marketplaces. Think of it like stocks in the NASDAQ. However, the stocks would be the physical products like corn and soybeans, while the NASDAQ would be the Chicago Mercantile Exchange, which is where the majority of Tom's commodities are sold through.
And it's very complex. I mean, because then there's puts and there's options and you can forward contract, you can basis contract, and it's always a moving target. Every single day is different on the marketing side, and it all depends on when that end user wants the grain.
But by selling some of the corn this way, he avoids this whole process and instead sets the price himself. On average, Perlick Farms will sell 1.5 million pounds of corn a year this way, contributing to 11% of their yearly revenue. The rest of the corn is still sold on the commodity market along with all of their soybeans, contributing to 68% of their yearly revenue. A segment of their success is also due to Tom's desire to try new crops. He doesn't want to be just a CBA farmer, corn, beans, and Arizona, as he calls it.
If you don't try new things, you never expand what the possibilities could be. And we might come onto something that, wow, is a really, really good fit for this area. But if you don't try, you never know.
An example of this is the farm's introduction of sunflowers in 2017.
My most profitable crop, hands down, is sunflowers. It's the most work. It's the most difficult crop to grow and to harvest and to clean and bag and plant and everything, but it's my most profitable.
Sunflowers are planted every year in May and harvested in October. Tom cleans and bags the seed himself, and then they are all sold directly off the farm, contributing to 13% of their yearly revenue.
You know, on our farm, we've been very, very insistent on doing value-added things, such as the bagged corn, this bagged sunflowers we sell directly off the farm, starting the distillery so we have some control over the price that we get paid for the crops that we grow.
But Tom still isn't content, considering he also introduced a brand new bean crop this year.
They grow these in Idaho, the Red River Valley in Minnesota, North Dakota, and Michigan. These are called a dry edible black bean, and these will go for, if you've ever had beans and rice, that's what they use them for. Oh, they're getting pretty hard. As I've always believed, you know, we've got to do what we can to add more value to it. And I don't know how these will work out financially. I'm thinking they'll be okay. It depends on yield, but I've never grown them before. So, you know, if they do well, I'll grow more. If they don't do well, I'll grow less or none at all.
We aren't sure how, but Tom managed to fit in the work needed to grow these into his already packed schedule.
I harvest my winter wheat first, then I harvest the spring wheat or the barley, depends which one is ready. And so I'll do those two for the entire month of typically end of July and into September. I'll do these in September, then I'll move into soybeans in October, and then I'll do the sunflowers, and then I'll go into corn, and hopefully I get the corn all harvested before the snow flies. A 60-hour work week is a pretty easy work week for me. You know, there are a lot of times I'm 70, 80, 90, 100 hours a week. And I'm not saying that to complain, because I am not at all. I'm just very fortunate to be able to do that and produce food.
He's very passionate about farming. He's extremely bright. The kids love him, grandkids love him. He's fun to be around.
So I'm always trying to diversify and add value, right? You know, dear, I think we should convert this to an Airbnb. What do you think?
I'm not. January, February, and March are probably the only times of the year that Tom can truly commit to doing something with me. So, you know, I go to weddings by myself. I go to birthday parties by myself. I go to, you know, I spend a lot of time living my life without my husband by my side. I do think that farm wives could support each other a little bit, just talking about some of those things. Maybe that's what I'll do in retirement, start a support group.
I spend time in the tractor, in the combine, in the semi, and there's just no other way around that. You just have to do those things if you're going to farm. So yeah, it's a different lifestyle, but we make it work, and we have a ball doing it.
The truth is, the benefits of this lifestyle far outweigh those aggravations, shall we call them.
Farms of America is presented by RM43. Serious weed control. Farms of America is presented by RM43. Serious weed control.
The last portion of Perlick Farm's operation is what truly drew us in to their story. Of the 350 acres of small grains such as wheat and barley that's grown on the farm, roughly 20% of the crop is sold to their own distillery where, you guessed it, value gets added through the process of fermentation.
So everything starts here. And I've got a pad here, and I run an auger that goes from here up to the top of that, and I call that my wet bin. And the reason I call it a wet bin is because we put the wet wheat, you know, that's not been dried.
Grain bin dryers, such as this one, can dry the 45,000 bushels of wheat in just 4 days. After the drying is complete, the wheat goes through a cleaning process, where the grain is screened based on size, before it is hauled a half-mile down the road to their distillery.
Take her all the way to the top. A little more.
At this stage, the grain has now transitioned from Tom and the farm to the distillery, where it becomes Scott's.
After, you know, as I was getting done with law school, I was like in that last year of law school, it was kind of trying to figure out what I wanted to do. I wasn't 100% sure. I'd spent my time in the city, kind of traveled the world a little bit, been kind of all over the place. And, you know, I always thought northern Wisconsin was quite overlooked area of the country. And figured it was kind of a good spot in my life to move back and give this a shot. I really didn't have anything to lose. We figured we'd make some alcohol, see what people would think, you know, if they'd come to drink it, great. And there wasn't that much of a plan other than taking the grains we're growing here and trying to make the best product possible.
The result was American Yeoman vodka, made of 80% wheat and 20% barley, all being sourced from their farm.
Alcohol is made by yeast, a single-celled organism, eating sugars, and a byproduct of the yeast eating sugar gives us alcohol. So that goes for beer, wine, distilled spirits. That's how alcohol is made. If we're making vodka, the federal definition of vodka is any alcohol distilled to 95%, diluted to not more than 40%, and filtered to give without a distinct odor, color, or taste. So that's vodka.
In order for alcohol production to be successful, the barley must be malted first.
Malt barley is basically sprouted barley, right? You think of it kind of this way, is if I were to take a barley seed or a wheat seed, corn, put it in the ground, it's gonna start to grow, right? It's gonna start sprouting, germinating, growing, and as it does that, it needs to get its energy from somewhere. And it has that energy stored in that seed as starches, right? And those starches are really stable, they don't go bad, stuff doesn't eat them. But when that seed actually starts sprouting, it produces these enzymes, these proteins that will break down those starches into sugars.
Those enzymes become critical in the mashing process, which mixes water, the malted barley, and wheat together. As the mixture gets heated to 145 degrees, those enzymes break down the starches that are in the wheat flour into simple sugars. The mash is then pumped into none other than their old dairy bulk tanks, which is some of the last remnants of their dairy operation, now repurposed as fermentation tanks. As it fills, it's time for the yeast. It starts out in a small bucket of the mash mixture to make sure the yeast are active before dumping it into the bulk tank.
And it'll sit in here for 4 days. So this is a batch that just started yesterday. So those yeast are basically eating those sugars. As they eat those sugars that we've broken down from our wheats, they're producing a lot of different stuff. So a lot of carbon dioxide, that's just bubbling right now. They're gonna make a lot of methanol, methylene, ester alcohols, fusel oils, ethyl alcohol, a lot of heat as well. These tanks will actually heat up to a little past 90 degrees.
After the 4 days of fermentation have passed, now the alcohol has been produced. And from this point forward, the actual distilling process takes place, which is separating that alcohol from the spent grains and water. It involves using steam to boil the mixture and separate the different compounds based on their boiling temperature. The alcohol will be refined to 95% and then diluted down to 40% before officially becoming vodka. At this point, it's ready to be bottled and sold at their distillery or distributed to retailers. Scott told us they roughly sell 20,000 bottles a year. 75% of the sales are through their distillery, while the other 25% is distributed. The grains bought from the farm that are to be used in the distillery contributes to 8% of the farm's yearly revenue.
Farms of America is presented by RM43. Serious weed control. Farms of America is presented by RM43. Serious weed control.
Since 2014, Perlick Distillery has blossomed into a successful business and a must-stop for many Wisconsinites, thanks to Scott and his passion to build something worthwhile. In the last 20 years, Scott has served in the Air Force, earned a law degree, taught himself how to run a distillery, and most recently became a father.
Our very first date, he kind of filled me in on, what he's been doing since high school, and I was taken aback, and I was kind of, okay, you're how old? How did you do all those things so far?
I think he's a pretty dang good dad. In fact, I tell him often, I say, Scott, you're a lot better dad than I was. And he just smiles.
Tom and Scott make a great team, but it wasn't always this way.
First couple of years, I have to tell you, it was tough. We didn't come to blows, but boy, I'll tell you what, we
Got pretty close.
We had some. It was difficult, and Scott's a strong-willed person, and I am too. But ultimately, I think what happened is finally it got to the point where I think one day, Scott, I told you, I said, you know what, this just isn't working. I said, this is how we're going to do it. You don't tell me how to farm. I won't tell you how to run the distillery.
And with Scott's philosophy on how it should be ran, the distillery has grown exponentially.
Being in this business, especially the liquor business, there's a lot of marketing. I mean, it's just nearly all of it, 100% of it's marketing. And we kind of want to take a different approach to that, and actually offer something that was authentic, genuine. Stuff in the tasting room is right stuff from the farm here. The floors, the rock floors are my revenge on these rocks that we have up here.
Scott created the distillery to be the embodiment of the farm-to-table concept.
Say you went to a winery and you get to the winery and it's an industrial park or right on Main Street. It'd be kind of goofy, right? Because you're like, where's the vineyards? Where's the grapes that actually go to make this? And so how do we take that same idea of that winery and do it with the distilled spirits? And so we had the perfect setting for it. We're growing the stuff here. The taste room's right out in the field.
Which has contributed to the success of their products and the distillery as a whole. It's also given the little town of Serona something to root for.
The one time it kind of sunk in a little bit is somebody came in and said they were at a place in Spooner and somebody had told them, hey, have you been to our distillery yet? It's like, oh, well, that's kind of cool, you know?
And from what we could tell, the locals truly feel that this is theirs. They're proud that a place like this exists in their community, just like the Perlicks are proud that a little piece of Serona is being shared with thousands every day.
For me, it's been really, really cool to see a product that's totally grown from here, produced here, and it's sold basically everywhere, right, that we can. And, you know, I've been around the world, you know, with the military and traveling and stuff, and I really think northern Wisconsin is probably one of the most overlooked spots in the entire world. But it's fun to see, again, something from kind of the middle of nowhere that can go on a shelf, say in Madison, Milwaukee, and look, you know, get bought there.
Although the future isn't certain once Tom retires from the farm, it's obvious that Tom and Scott have created something special here in Serona.
I'm just incredibly proud of my brother and incredibly proud of what they've done here and his unrelentless passion for making this place be what it is today. And I know the future of it's going to be even bigger and grander. And he's got so many more things up his sleeve, and I'm just very proud of him.
Number one, I'm pretty proud of Scott. I think you've done a pretty dang good job here.
Well, thanks.
And to see a profitable farm that's producing a great product, I take a lot of pride in that. And I hope the people that enjoy our distillery do as well.
The Perlicks have built a place that brings the consumer and the farm together, which will hopefully inspire others to learn about the importance of farming. As our time here was coming to an end, we thought about what these few days in cabin country taught us. We learned that the most beautiful place in the world might just be your own backyard. To not underestimate what your community and neighbors can do for you. And lastly, to never stop trying new things, because you never know what's going to stick.